Hey everyone, so recently I finally achieved a rating of 2000 in the Blitz time control on chess.com, completing my golden trifecta of getting to 2000 in Rapid, Bullet, and now Blitz. And just like with Bullet, I did this one live on stream. I started the stream with my rating at 1997, and then about 3 hours later, I finally got to 2000. So you can imagine the massive losing streaks that happened in that time. But I finally got back, and this video is simply going to be that final game that got me to 2000. I don't do a lot of videos like this on my channel of just straight up me playing a chess game, but I think it's kind of cool to see a chess player that's like completely locked in, focused on the game, and then afterwards I'll come back and do a little bit of analysis of the game. Okay, one more game? One more game? Oh my gosh, we're almost there. Okay, we can do this. We've been here before. This is it. We're calm. We're ready. Let's go here. We're fast. I'm a little nervous to castle that way. Let's put it off one more move. Or two. If I go here, I think everything's fine. In fact, this is probably good. Let's go. I don't know if I should castle. I kind of don't want to. I'm not gonna castle. But I need to get my rook in. Take. Kind of losing the thread here. I'm gonna let them have that pawn. Let's go. We finally did it. Alright, and with that, we will get into some analysis of this game. As you can see, I was exhausted after the long stream, and I was just very relieved to finally met my goal. Let's take a look at what this game entailed, because it wasn't perfect. So we started out with my trusty London system. This opening where they fianchetto the bishop is not something I see too much, but with the London, I mean, it doesn't matter that much. You can kind of just continue doing what you want to do. I think the first major moment where I had a missed win came right here, where Black moved their queen, and in the game, and even after I took a look at the game, I didn't even see that that just hung a pawn. Like, I could just get a free pawn right out of the opening. But of course, splits, I was trying to play fast. I was really paying that close of attention, and, you know, it happens. In faster time controls, you miss a lot of things. So notice here, instead, I played the queen up, and after this knight moves out, I actually can't take this anymore, because if I were to do that, then Black could play this pawn down and trap my bishop. The difference in the position before this, where I had this missed win, is that in that case, if I were to play this and Black tried to trap my bishop, then I can take the knight that is still on the back rank, and we just have an equal trade, and I'm simply up a pawn. But here, after the knight moves out, that isn't possible because there's not a knight there for me to take. So we continue. I decided to push in the center, which is the best move according to the computer, and Black castled queenside, which I was quite happy to see because my bishop and my queen were on the perfect diagonal to come over here and trade off Black's light squared bishop, which is doing a great job of defending all of the light squares around Black's king. So once this bishop is gone, that usually means that the defense around Black's king is just going to be a little weaker. So Black plays in the center, and noticeably, I don't take this pawn. I don't think I even consider taking this pawn because my king is still in the center. I would much rather lock down the position and go after the attack, so I don't even really have to worry so much about getting my king to safety by castling, because there's just really no way for Black to break through if the center is locked up when I play the move e5. This also attacks the knight, forcing the knight to move and then giving me a chance to take this bishop, which was my whole plan in the first place. So the knight comes to the side, attacking my bishop. I don't have to worry about this bishop even though it's hanging, because when I take Black's bishop on b7, it comes with check. So the king has to do something about that. They take, and then I can move my bishop safely back. And pretty quickly after this, I start moving my pawns up the board on the other side of the board where Black's king is castled, right? I, at this point, am not even sure I really want to castle. And as you saw in the game, I decided at some point that I didn't want to castle. The center is completely locked down, and you know, all these pawns coming at the king side doesn't really make me that comfortable with castling my king over there, because Black can even do things like sacrifice a pawn. And once this file is opened up, it's just a little bit more dangerous for my king. So king safety was a major theme here. According to the computer, at this point, instead of playing the queen up and, you know, just going for the attack, I should have just castled here. Apparently there was nothing to worry about. But that's computers for you. To a human, this looks scary. Black's knight comes to my side of the board, and I just decided to snap it off with my bishop that's not really doing much over here in the corner. And, you know, this knight is a lot stronger than my bishop, especially in this closed position where knights are typically better than bishops. I'd rather just get rid of Black's knight. Black recaptures, and then this was the point where I decided not to castle. Apparently it's better to just castle, but the potential of this rook coming to the g file that's just wide open here, it just didn't really give me a sense of security in my position. My opponent was also up by 30 seconds at this point, so I was just trying to go after a quick attack and make my opponent think a little bit, because if I castle, that makes their plans completely easy. They move the rook in, they start to bring their pieces down, probably do another bit of a pawn storm. Realistically, and looking at it in hindsight, this can't really be much of a pawn storm, because the pawn that would be more the issue is actually the g-pawn, because eventually it would be able to come down and strike at this weakness that I've created by pushing the pawn to h3, and Black just doesn't have a g-pawn anymore. So even though this file is opened up, it's not as scary as it might look, but in any case, I decided not to castle, and the game goes on. So my opponent here tried to break into the center by pushing the f-pawn forward. My king is in the center, so this does make sense. There are quite a few inaccuracies around this phase of the game. So after a few more moves, we are both continuing with our plans. Black brings their rook to the open g file, hoping to go after that pawn. I'm pushing my pawn to b4, and after trading it off, I bring my queen back to continue the attack. This move is actually threatening to take the knight because this pawn could not take the queen back because it's pinned by the rook, and if this pawn were to move, then the king would be in check, and that's an illegal move. So Black protects their knight, so I decide to trade off this knight and recapture with the rook. Black goes for the queen trade, and the only way to keep an equal position here, at least according to the engine, is to capture the queen and actually go for the queen trade. But this is a little counterintuitive because to me it looks like I have a very strong attack going and I don't want to give up my attacking piece just for the sake of it, you know? So I decide not to trade queens, instead moving my queen back, but this was a big mistake because of this potential move bishop f8, attacking the queen and also opening up for the rook to attack this pawn. And in this variation, if the bishop moves up, I can take this free pawn, but the best move here for Black isn't even to take the g pawn, it's actually to bring the bishop into the attack by going to c5, and then eventually once the rook does take this pawn, it will be a double attack on the f pawn as well. My king is not very safe right now. And looking just a little bit further at this variation, if I attempt to protect the g pawn by pushing it forward, now Black has this move, queen g6, threatening the check here to win my rook, and everything is just kind of falling apart here. But that's not what happened in the game. Instead, Black brought their queen over to c6. I finally got to push my a-pawn, just chipping away at the defenses around the Black king. And now the bishop comes back, and I put my queen on d4, choosing not to take this pawn because to me it seems that this was sort of blocking off Black's own attack. You know, there's no way that a rook can come in and do any damage down this f-file. If I were to take this pawn off the board, then things on the f-file are just in a little bit more danger. And so I preferred to just continue my attack, not worry about grabbing free pawns. In hindsight, I probably should have just taken the free pawn, but that's okay. Also notice that Black can never take this pawn, by the way, because after we take, again, we have this pin tactic. Pinned pawns don't protect, and this pawn would not be able to capture back because the rook is pinning the pawn to the king. And now Black gives this queen check, essentially forcing the queen trade. I decided to move my rook back, keeping it on the b file, and even though it's on a dark square and Black has a dark squared bishop, there's no way for this bishop to come in and attack anytime soon because these squares are just all covered by my rooks. So we're perfectly fine here. Black finally cashes in, grabs the free g-pawn. I jumped my knight up, going after some of these central pawns that are now hanging. Black moves the bishop to c5, and I noticed here that I probably should not move the knight because then there would be a double attack, kind of like we saw earlier in that other variation against the f-pawn. And, if I were to take this pawn, we would see something like this. And after my king moves, I am losing a rook. Instead, I used my king as an attacking piece and went after Black's rook. Black decided to go all the way back to g8. And again here, I can take this free f-pawn and win my pawn back, but then there starts to be some checks down this file, and I just wasn't quite ready for dealing with that. So instead, I decided to continue using my knight as a good attacking piece, grabbing that pawn. After the bishop moves back, I decided to move my knight back, and the bishop moves back again. At this point, I had 45 seconds to my opponent's about 1:24 on the clock, so I was pretty low on time. I was kind of at the point of just shuffling the pieces around. This was a game with no increment, so there is a certain point where you just kind of have to make good enough moves to survive. I moved my rook up. This was not a great decision according to the engine because after this capture happens, then Black's king gets really active and attacks my rook, and it's just not a very strong position when I had a pretty decent attack going before. But instead, Black tries to go and win another pawn by trying to capture. I decided quickly not to allow that to happen. Black took the knight, I recaptured, and now I've got these really strong pawns that you saw in the game will essentially determine the outcome of this game. Even though the evaluation says it is equal now, things kind of went downhill quickly for my opponent in the next couple of moves. So the only move for Black to sort of survive here is to play this move king c6, again just going after the rook, forcing me to give up a tempo by moving it. In that case, my plan was to drop back here and just go after this pawn. But instead, Black decided to bring their rook to this open g file, and I moved my rook away from a1, where it's been sitting for quite a while, finally allowing this pawn to be captured, which Black did not cash in on for a few moves. Black brought their rook down to attack my f-pawn. I moved it up because I figured that was kind of an important pawn. It's blocking the path of their far advanced f-pawn, and I didn't want any chances for them to try and promote that baby. Black goes after the a-pawn. They could have taken it on the previous move, but you know, the more the merrier over there. So I captured the c-pawn. Black took, I took. We're down to just one rook each, and now it is completely winning for white. These connected passers are really just going to do some damage because it's going to take a second for Black to get back and defend. And in the meantime, as I continue to make that threat of moving them up the board, the plan would be to come over here and eventually like win these pawns and make even more threats. And it's just very difficult for Black to hold this here. So I immediately started pushing my furthest advanced pass pawn, which was the e-pawn, essentially forcing Black to go back and defend that back rank, keeping that e-pawn protected, and now I can finally take that f-pawn that has been sitting there free for quite a while. And this here was kind of a key moment that went by pretty fast in the game. So after Black gives this check on f8, I move my king up rather than keeping it close to defend this pawn, because after the Black rook takes, I can then just push my e-pawn forward and Black's rook cannot come back and, you know, protect the back rank where my pawn's going to promote, because I'll just take it. Black grabbed as much material as they could. My last remaining pawn over there, but this h-pawn is just not far advanced enough to really make any kind of a threat of promotion itself. I promoted to a queen. Black gave this kind of final desperado check, and luckily my rook was on the perfect spot to just slide over and block the check. If that rook had not been on this fourth rank, then, you know, promoting would have been a giant mistake because I would have had to move my king and the rook could just take. But after this point, after Black decided to trade rooks, it was a relatively simple conversion. I think I was thinking that I was a little more down on time than I actually was because I was really pre-moving here. But I had been hit so badly with time trouble in the past that there was just no chance that I was going to lose this game on time. So I was moving as fast as I possibly could, just avoiding any possible stalemates. And with just a few more moves, I promoted to a queen with checkmate. And my one regret in this game, as pointed out by Camille Plichta on Twitter, was not promoting here to a bishop for checkmate for style points. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new around here, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you soon.